All right, so I'm here. This is the Millionaire Mom Method. I'm so excited to have Sarah Waldbuesser. She is an attorney and the owner of Destination Legal. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yay, so excited to chat today. So, what I love about this interview series that I do is I love to help other women inspire, teach, and grow. So, that's always my goal out of these sessions. So, I love learning from other women. I think we can all grow together, right? That is my big mission in life is that we rise
Absolutely.
together,
Yeah.
support each other, bring each other up along the way. So, with that, I would love to hear. I always like hearing kind of that moment of inspiration. Do you feel like there was a moment or a multitude of moments where you feel like you felt this transformation yourself and you were like, oh my God, I got to share this with the world, or I need to do this on my own so that the world knows this message? Do you feel like there was a moment or what was that like for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us that are moms and business owners, like one of the reasons we start businesses is for freedom and flexibility.
A
And
hundred
so
percent.
for me, I had a definite like sitting in my basement apartment. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. I had my supposed dream job, and I was just unhappy. And I was like, why am I unhappy? What do I really want? I remember sitting on the floor with a journal and just like writing out like I want to travel, I want flexibility, I want to be able to work from Starbucks or to work from Thailand. And it was like that kind of
Yeah.
vision. And once I had it out there, I worked really hard to make it come true. And I realized that other people were doing this. This was more than 10 years ago. And
Yes.
I found other people that were running online businesses, and it was kind of that moment that I was just like, I want this life. I want to be out of the quote unquote norm. I want to have the
Hmm.
flexibility in the future. This was before I met my husband, before I had kids, but I knew that that
Oh
day
my
was
goodness.
coming and that I
Yes.
wanted the flexibility
Flexibility.
in the
Yes.
future. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So really, definitely, I feel like you're not alone. I feel like so many moms, right? Especially after we have kids, and for you before you even had kids, have that moment where you're like, there has to be more than this like 9 to 5 working for the man, right? Working for the corporation. Like there's got to be more. So yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely I
like,
definitely feel that. I think
4 weeks vacation, asking two
yeah,
weeks in advance, like, no, thank
yes.
you. Yeah.
2% if you're lucky raise, right?
Mhm.
Like yeah.
Yeah.
So true. So with that, how do you feel like now that you have kids, how do you feel like you either incorporate your kids or do you incorporate your kids kind of in your work? Do you feel like there's a place that they either help or that you either share a little bit about your business with them, or how do you incorporate your
No,
kids
they
even
have they have
together?
no
Okay,
idea what I do. Like
gotcha.
they're still young. They're almost
Yes.
5 and 7. My seven
Oh,
year old.
sure.
So, I do trademarks. I'm a trademark attorney. My son will like see things on trucks and things and be like, "What's it?"
Oh,
I'm like, that's a trademark. That's what mommy does. I
yes.
think they have no idea. And it's
Oh my
interesting
goodness.
because they're growing up with such a skewed perception of reality that many of their friends don't have because my husband is in real estate. He also works from home. So it's like we're always around. We're always we can pick
Yeah.
anyone up when needed, drop off when needed, and like it's never a thing. And then,
Yes.
a couple of years ago, but in 2024, we traveled abroad for a year and
Oh my
worked,
goodness.
had our online businesses, and
Yes.
that was just our life. And so for them, entrepreneurship is just going to be kind of what they know.
The
Um,
norm.
I think
Yes.
fairly soon we will, hire them and do some of the tax strategies around having them in the business. But I think at this
Yes.
point, all they know is that mommy works from her computer.
Oh, of course. Oh, that's awesome though. And
Yeah.
what an inspiration for other women who are working to know that it's doable, right? If you want to be more with your kids, and I think most moms do, but also have like your own thing. I think that's so valuable, and to have the freedom to be able to travel or work from wherever you want to work, right?
Yeah.
And
It is,
I
it
just
is a blessing and a curse though, because,
sure.
sometimes I have calls at night because like I work with someone that actually lives in Thailand. And so to talk to her, it has to be in the evening. And so they see me like on my computer at night and, they're
Yes,
like knocking on the door, like, what
it
are
is
you doing?
hard.
Well, I'm working. Well, why are you working now? So I think it definitely comes with its own set of baggage as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you can't shut down at 5 o'clock, right? You are still
Exactly. Yeah.
available and whether you want to be or not. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's so true. But I think it's important that kids see that you're around and that there's a different way, right? So I think
There's a
that's really
balance,
valuable.
right? Yeah.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So tell us a bit about what you do, right? And how people can learn about you and get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've said, I'm an attorney. I have a business called Destination Legal where I help mostly coaches, online business owners, service providers legally protect themselves with contracts and trademarks. And I do this through, we have a legal template shop where I sell over 30 legal templates for coaches, online business owners, service providers, things like coaching contracts, retreat contracts,
Mm,
everything you need for your website. Um, you know, terms of purchase, lots of different things on there. And then those are downloadable, do it yourself, customizable templates. And then I also am a trademark attorney. I provide full service trademark registration packages and other, trademark related services for my clients.
I love that. And what is kind of your advice, I'm sure, about trademarks? Is that something you encourage coaches should have with their programs? Like, what does that really protect you with, or what's kind of your take on why we need
Yeah,
that?
well, I'll say what I told my son when he asked, "What's that TM?"
Yes,
And I would say, like, it's what allows you to own your brand, right? It's what
yes.
distinguishes one brand from another. When we see, a white cup with a green circle, we know it's Starbucks. When we see a tennis shoe with
Mhm.
a swoosh, we know it's Nike. These things exist out in the
Yeah.
marketplace, and they also exist in our online world, right? So a
Yes.
lot, people trademark the name of their business, of course, but also the name of their podcast, the name of their signature
Mm.
program or course, the name of a membership or a retreat. And what that
Hmm.
does is it really gives you the power to decide who can use that name and not within your industry. And so, there's I say it's both offensive and defensive because you have it and you're powerful, which is amazing, but it also means nobody else can have it. And so there's some security
Yes.
that comes when we're all throwing time, money, energy, and marketing dollars towards building our
Yes.
brands. If we don't own the name, I always say it's like without the trademark, you're building a house on land you don't own. And so it's just a
Mm.
really smart business investment. It's an asset to have in your business. And yes, I think the majority of business owners within the first, I would say, 3 years probably is when they really want to start thinking about making sure they have at least one trademark, and then it's addicting, right? Like I
Yeah.
have, 4 or 5, I think, at this point, and
Ooh, nice.
established business owners. Amy Porterfield, I think, has 9. The
Wow.
Kardashians have 900. So, we don't all need that, but um,
Fascinating.
definitely something to think about.
Genius. Oh, I love that. And so how do you feel like, right? We talked about, is there some little, that's a little bit of a teaching nugget, but do you feel like, is there some little piece of advice that you would give, that you've learned along the way that you would give other mompreneurs that you feel like has either helped you either balance that kind of mom and work life or just helped you grow your business? Is there some little piece of, lesson or what's been your biggest lesson, I suppose, in
Yeah,
your
so
journey?
I'll say two for me, and then I'll throw in just one little legal nugget there at the end.
Yes, of course.
So for me, something that I think has been really important that I'm always working at. I'm definitely not an expert. I'm sure many listeners and you can relate that is important is scheduling and time blocking.
Yes.
And, I when I do it, when I time block, I love having like certain days for certain things. I notice I'm so much more productive and it just keeps from the constant like task switching around.
Yes.
I know as moms, especially, we're always trying to multitask and that can take over into our businesses as well. But
Yes.
having things like Mondays I'm doing content and Tuesdays I'm doing client work, like that has really helped me focus. The second is something I wish I, had just done better from the beginning. I've been doing this for 10 years now, which is just tracking more
Yeah.
analytics, more KPIs, from
Ooh.
everything from, obviously opt-in rates and things like that to email subscribers to, just checking in, seeing what messaging is working and things like that. I have never been great at it, and it's always a work in progress, but I think it's really important because data is everything, right? Data, if we don't
Yes.
have the data, then we don't really know what are we basing things on. So I would say,
Yes.
just the more tracking, the better. And
Yes.
then finally, the third little legal nugget is like, we talked a minute about trademarks, but really the foundation of any online business, whether you're a coach, service provider, anything like that, is to make sure you have a one-on-one contract in place. People ask me, like, what's the number one mistake that people make? And it's just not
Mm.
having a contract at all. And fortunately these days there are stores, shops like Destination Legal where you can get something that is attorney drafted, right? You shouldn't be piecing this together yourself. You shouldn't be chat GBTing your legal, right? Like this is something
Mhm.
to make sure you know the source from. And once you have a strong contract in place, you'll feel more confident. Your clients will feel better, and it just makes for a smoother process for sure.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And that is so true that I always feel like legal is one of those things that, when I was a kid, that felt like a little bit of a different, like unattainable, right? Like, oh, that's a service that, other people have access to, right? That's not something we use every day or something like that. Whereas now, and, people like you working with moms, I feel like it feels much more accessible, right? And I really feel like getting yourself set up and safeguarded, I think is such a great and amazing access to all moms or all business owners that is so important.
Absolutely. 15 years ago, online legal wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. If you
Yeah.
wanted a contract, you were going to a law firm. You were probably talking to
Yes.
some old white dude who had never even heard of coaching or the online business
Yes.
world, and you were
Yes.
probably paying $3,000 to $5,000. Now you
Yes.
have a contract template by an attorney that knows the online
Yes.
space for a couple $100. Like it really
Amazing.
is, an
Leaps
amazing
and bounds.
thing. And one of my goals is always to make legal feel less scary and more empowering, right? Because the more you have
Yes.
your business and get that foundation in place, the better you feel.
Yes, that is so true. And speaking to your templates, I know there are a couple of things that every website should have or every business should have online. Are there something in your
Yeah,
templates that
yep,
you can speak to?
for sure. So we have our website collection, which includes like the three main pieces for your website. One is privacy policy, which I think most people have heard of. It's legally required in the US and most countries, Canada, UK, EU, Australia have these requirements in place. And basically it just tells people that, that are visiting your website and that are giving you their email address that it's going to be safe and secure. You're not going to sell it, you're not going to trade it, you're not going to market it, or maybe you are, right? You just need to disclose that, and that you may be
Yes.
using cookies and track signals and things like that. So that's the big one. And then the other two are
Yeah.
website terms of service and disclaimers. And basically that's just saying, hey, welcome to my website. Everything here is information, education only, right? So if we have a blog, a newsletter, a vlog, anything like that,
Yes.
we're putting information out into the world. And when we do that,
Yes.
we open ourselves up to liabilities. So that those
Yes.
website terms of service and disclaimers kind of outline how people can use your website, what they cannot, what they can and cannot do with the information on there.
Oh, I love that. That is so important and probably something that is so missed so often, right? Because we don't
Yeah, it's
know.
very often missed. And it's like it's one of those things that once it's there in the footer on every page of your website, you don't have to worry about it. It's kind of just
Yes.
lives there and does its thing.
Yes.
But like a privacy policy, for example, should also be on any landing pages where you're collecting emails. And so, if you're running ads to an opt-in or something like that, and you don't have a privacy policy there, Meta may not approve your ads. So if ads are getting blocked for some reason, it could
Mm.
be because you don't have that privacy policy on there.
Oh, that's good to know. And so what is the like starting place? Would you send people to your template library or do you offer some type of like consultation, or what is
Yeah,
the
I
best way to
do.
get started?
That's a fabulous lead in because I do have a 30-minute, which I call my legal power half hour, right? Because you
Ooh, love
can
that.
get a lot done in 30
30
minutes.
minutes.
And
Yeah.
it's a chance to just chat with me, ask your legal questions, and you walk away with really knowing what you need now and what you need later, right? Because legal really, you don't need everything
Yes,
now
all at once.
typically. It's something that you build on. I like to call it kind of like a legal toolbox. As
Yes.
you're starting, you might just have one services. And then, in a couple months or a half a year, you might have an online course or a program. And then next year, you're planning a retreat and now you're doing a partnership. Each of those things needs
Yeah.
a contract, but not all at once. So the Legal Power
Love
Half
that.
Hour is just a great chance to connect with me and talk about that. And we'll make sure to include that link in the show notes and everything.
Amazing. And that's such a good point because you're right. We're all kind of growing, and legal feels like something, well, I gotta, if I make an appointment with somebody in person, I've got to, make sure I get everything in that whatever paid for a session. But it's great to get started with someone like you and then have you kind of in our back pocket and see how we can grow right together and be able
Exactly.
to
I
check
have
in with
so
you.
many, people that have been coming to the template shop for 10 years. Like they
Uh,
started, they needed this, and now they need this, and
yes.
then they're adding this, and then and then they need a trademark and head over to that
Yeah.
direction. So
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. And so tell us what your vision for the future, right? Whether that includes, more legal or not, but what do you feel like is kind of your hope for, your kids' generation, future women in the world? What's kind of your hope for us all growing together?
yeah, it's such an interesting question, especially right now. And I know as moms, a lot of us are thinking about how our kids are learning these days. I just saw a post today on Instagram that was like, our kids are in school for a future that may not exist, right? Like, what is the future going to look like
Oh,
for them? And so I think, you know, my passion is freedom. I want everyone to have the type
yes,
of freedom that I've been lucky enough to have. I want my kids to have the type of freedom that they want. And if that means,
yes,
working their way up in a corporation, amazing. If that means becoming a professor, amazing. Entrepreneur, amazing.
yes,
So I think really like what my hope for everyone, and especially women and moms, is freedom to be with your kids, freedom to not be with your kids, right? Like freedom to
yes,
tap
yes,
out
that's
when
okay.
you need to, and
Yeah.
freedom to travel and learn. And just, I think we're in an era now that hasn't existed before where we can create and design our own lives. And I think that's really, I know, what you talk about a lot and what is so important in this stage of our life is just figuring out how to, just have that freedom and flexibility.
Yes, yes. And I sometimes don't like the word balance, but I love
Mhm.
that you speak to there are two sides of everything, right? Like there's multiple sides, but it's okay to be a mom that is stressed out and needs a break from her kids. It is okay to be a boss and to be working on that or to take a break from your business, right? It is okay to kind of figure that what that looks like. And it's not going to be equal time, right? It's not going to be equal for equal, but finding out what works for you, I think is really right, the challenge and the fun part too, right? That's really the journey
Yeah,
is to
it is. And I
having.
think remembering it's all stages, right? Like just when you're
Yeah,
starting out in your business, it might be more intense than when you're a few years in. Same with motherhood, so they tell me,
yeah.
right? We just recently got out of all pull-ups and diapers, so
Oh,
like
you're
that's a new
free.
thing. But
Yeah,
I'm still sometimes wiping butts. So
of
I,
course.
I think in a few years I'll be in a different place,
Oh
and
yes.
it's just remembering that and really enjoying each phase as much as possible
Yeah.
of kids and of business.
Yes, yes. And I think these conversations are so important because I think there have been so many stereotypes or so many limits that have been set on women in business, moms. And I think what I love about, our generation, this time period is that we are really like you said, kind of paving our path. You know, we're embracing what others have paved before us, but we're really kind of creating the future that does include us having our own jobs and being a mom, right? We all kind of want that, like, I think when you're a new mom, you're like, how can I make an income and be home, right? I
Yeah.
think that's such a challenge right now, because most moms can't, right? Most moms can't. They have to work and they can't be home. They want to do both. And so having your own business, I think, is the best way to do that. But
Yeah.
with that comes, right, so many challenges of
For
making that work.
sure. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. And one of the biggest ones, to do this, you really have to have self-discipline. Like you have
Yeah.
to be able to make yourself work, right?
So true.
There are days where I am a pretty terrible boss because I let myself have days off,
Of
when
course.
and um
Yes.
with that is it's amazing, but it also comes with responsibility of like you really have to be able to do things even when you don't want to.
Oh, yes, for sure, right? I feel like if you don't work at it, right, sometimes it would be really nice just to collect a paycheck.
Yeah,
Like that sounds pretty
exactly.
easy,
Yeah.
but it's also very limiting, right? I
Trade-offs.
appreciate
It's
the
all
freedom,
trade-offs. Yeah.
trade-offs for sure, yeah. And so, is there anything that you feel like you've learned with that mindset, right? We kind of talked a little bit. The more and more I learn in business is that it is such a self-development journey. It is such a transformational journey. Is there anything that you feel, I love talking about self-development or mindset? Is there anything that you have learned along the way that has really helped either shift your mindset or really helped you stay motivated to get up and do the work or be with the kids or whatever that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I did this a lot, especially at the beginning when I was crossing those initial milestones of like 10K months and six-figure
Yeah.
year. And, I think one thing is that manifesting and visualization are things that really work. And like, I used to
Yeah.
like write down what I wanted, or, if we're talking carrots and sticks, I'm definitely a carrot person. I would be like, if I
Mm.
meet this goal, then I get to go do this, or I get to buy that, or I get to go
Ooh.
on this trip. And so I think using those types of things from the traditional self-development gurus of, like the Think and Grow Rich and Secrets
Hmm.
of a Millionaire Mind, things like that. Like I'm not especially woo-woo, but I do think those types of practices really do work. The journaling, the affirmations, the manifestations, the visualizations, even just small amounts each day, I think really do make a difference.
Absolutely. And it sounds like reading, right? I'm a big believer in, learning from
Yeah,
the other people that have gone
yeah,
before you. And so learning other perspectives and reading other perspectives is a really great way to get into those worlds, I think, for sure.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Awesome. Was there anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, thank you for having me. I love these kinds of chats. Again, would love to chat with anyone in a legal power half hour, or feel free to DM me on Instagram at Sarah Waldbuesser with any questions, and happy always to help.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. I'll include all the links below and I'll be excited to stay in your world and learn some legal tips and chat with you sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. We'll see you around.